I guess not even a statement. That's the cause, not even a statement. You're going to get a legabre. As a statement, even as a statement, because because lo yigel shul legabre. Don't get it legabre. That would be the problem. Then what's over? Right. So why did they do it? There's a problem because they don't have this understanding.
It's a big schos that we have, that we don't have to travel, we don't have to follow Rabbi Shapiro around wherever he goes to hear him. We could hear him right here in our own community. And especially now, at a time that there's a lot of turmoil, and it's the zman of introspection, the zman of the 3 weeks. It's a big schos that we have within our community, one of the greatest mashpiyim in the entire country, and shlucha derabanan, many inyanim, to lead us in inyanim and befrat here in our community. So it's a big schos to hear divrei chizuk v'eirus from Rabbi Shapiro Shlita. Thank you very much for giving us your time.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here, and it gives me the opportunity to publicly express mamish words that are on my heart. Firstly, a tremendous akar satayv to the two Rosh Kollel, Rabbi Blezer and to Rabbi Singer. Of course, to all of the Choshev Yungalite, and to those in the Kehillah who came tonight. I'm very, very grateful. Ein milim befila habia rigshay levavi, that we came together to try to get chizuk in these days of Bein HaMitzarim. But on a very personal note, before I even begin, I want to thank the Kollel, the Yungalite Bechlal, and Rishus Rabbi Friedman, and the Roshei Kollel Befrat for the impact, of course, that they've had on our Kehillah. But on a personal level, the impact that the Kollel and the Roshei Kollel have had on me and on every member of my family. And that's something that I don't take for granted, not even for a moment. I can't even properly express it other than to say, Ein milim befila habia rigshay levavi. The most I could do is repeat that sentence that is bursting from within me. I can't even express, not bekamis or be'echos, the impact and the hashpah and what it means from the Roshei Kollel and from the Yungalite and the Kollel in general, and in every sense the impact that it's made on myself and every member of my family. And I know, of course, that there are hundreds of family and thousands of people who feel the same way. But this is just, I'm sorry that I'm taking a few minutes from the speech. I know we have to end by 10 o'clock, and I don't want to abuse my privilege. Or maybe by a few minutes, but not by a lot. But I felt al tzechiv of akaras hatoiv to express those words of appreciation for the impact in so many countless ways that the Kollel, the younger light, or Kollel have had on so many of us. It's something that's priceless, and I want to say thank you. When Yaakov Avinu was giving a bracha to his children, and he said, B'cho Yivarech Yisrael, when he was speaking about to Ephraim and Menashe. So B'cho Yivarech Yisrael, he literally means that the bracha for us should be like Ephraim and Menashe. Many reasons given why. But just to open with a simple thought as it relates to Bein HaMitzarim, you know, there's something that I'll be honest with you. It bothers me from time to time, if I'm allowed to say. And I don't mean here, and I don't mean anywhere specific at all. It's just an attitude that sometimes is prevalent. You know, I'm looking forward to the 3 weeks being over. Like, you know, I can't wait till, not Machas Yom Kippur and Machas Tisha B'Av, so that, okay, we could resume the swimming and listening to music and taking the haircut, and I could go back to eating meat. It's almost like the 3 weeks by some have become days that it's just, it's a little bit of a nuisance, it's a little bit of a hindrance. It really cramps my schedule very much. So I just want to see how quickly I could pass the days, get over with it, so that. That's a terrible, it borders on being a despicable approach. The 3 weeks are taka weeks of opportunity. They're weeks of growth. They're weeks of introspection. I know we usually talk that way about Elul and the Aseres Yemei Tshuva. That's true, but it's equally true when it comes to these 3 weeks. Especially, as Rabbi Blezer, the Rosh Kollel, said, these days that we're living through are just as unique and as extraordinary as anyone here, even though there are people in this room that are far older than me, or somewhat older than me, can remember. That's not hyperbole. The things that Klal Yisrael here, certainly in Eretz Yisrael, on so many levels are going through, is pretty much unprecedented. For a person to have the approach that the 3 weeks, I just like, in other words, they hear the words that I'm saying, but deep down kind of hope, like, can we just let them go by without, you know, and then I can enjoy summer. It's a terrible approach. So when Yaakov Avinu was blessing and giving a bracha about Ephraim and Menashe, and really essentially Klal Yisrael, he said, B'cho Yivarech Yisrael. So I once saw a beautiful word. B'cho Beis Chof is the gematria of 22. Beis Chof. It's a mistake to think that in the 3 weeks there are 21 days. That's not true. Obviously, in the 3 weeks, there are 22 days, because let's say this year, where Shavasar B'Tammuz was on a Tuesday, and 3 weeks later, Tisha B'Av is on a Tuesday, from Tuesday to Tuesday, Ad Vad B'Chlal, it's 22 days. And maybe that's what Yaakov Avinu was saying. B'cha, those 22 days of the Bein HaMitzarim, from Shavasar through and including Tisha B'Av, Yivarech Yisrael, turn them into days of bracha. Turn them into days of opportunity, of introspection, days of being able to poyalize and accomplish. But the other approach is something that really should cause a person sorrow, just even think that way. So I hope that we're able to accomplish from now till Meir that at least these days will be days, and that's why we're talking saying it now, Mamish, at the beginning, right after Shavasar of Becha, the 22 days, Shavasar through and including Tisha B'Av, Yivarech Yisrael, days of opportunity, days of introspection, days of what I could do to yearn for the Bayis Shlishi. Shchinta B'Gilusa should be the biggest reason that we're davening. It's interesting, we found a few weeks ago in Parshas Chukas, we just read that Bnei Yisrael was faulted for a wrongdoing. Many Mefarshim grapple with what was the wrongdoing, and that's why the proximity of the border of Edom is mentioned, Rashi, to say that it was something in reference to Edom. That was the wrongdoing of Klal Yisrael. There's a Nifladik Shem Mishmuel. The Shem Shmuel tells us that the wrongdoing, as mentioned in Parshas Chukas vis-a-vis our relationship with Edom, was that when we asked permission from the king of Edom to be able to enter into Eretz Yisrael, I didn't take a chumash in the beginning, Alex, thank you. I knew I should have taken one. The pasuk there says that we said, I believe, Koyamar Achicha Yisrael, that our emissaries are speaking on our behalf. We would like entry into Eretz Yisrael. So we asked, Koyamar Achicha Yisrael, this is what we are beseeching. And the Shem Shmuel says that you are referring to Edom as your brother? What is this, a kinship? You're trying to evoke favor of a brotherhood. You're my brother? My long-lost brother? How dare you? The Shemi Shmuel says that was the undoing of Klal Yisrael. That you went ahead and evoked and said, this idea of Koyamar Achicha Yisrael, that was, says the Shemi Shmuel, our downfall, because what right do you have to use the word Achicha vis-a-vis Edom? The kash is an obvious one. If a person takes a look in Devarim, Perach of Gimel Pasuk Ches, the Pasuk says, Leisisaiva Daimi, Ki Achichahu. They are our brother. So how could we possibly be faulted? And the Shemi Shmuel himself wonders says, how could we be faulted for going ahead and saying that Koyamar Achicha Yisrael, and that was our wrongdoing, that we shouldn't have evoked that kinship? How are you my long-lost brother? The Torah says, who they are your brother. So if they are, what was our fault? And if they're not, what does the pasuk mean? The Shemi Shmuel himself answers Nifladik. The Shemi Shmuel says, that pasuk over there that says Leisava Daimi Ki Achichahu is referring to Yaakov. Yaakov and Esav are Taka brothers. Esav is Adam. Yaakov and Esav are Taka brothers. They come from the same parents, and that's a true statement. There's no getting around it. They are brothers, Yaakov and Esav. The pasuk over here says that when we had emissaries that turned to the king of Edom, he said, Koyamar Achicha Yisrael. And Yisrael and Esav, they could never be brothers. Yaakov and Esav, says the Shemi Shmuel, they could be brothers. They are brothers, and that was their relationship. They came from the same parents. But although Yaakov and Esav are brothers, to think that Yisrael and Esav could be brothers, there could be absolutely no connection ever between Esav and Yisrael. Between Esav and Yaakov, yes, that's a fact, but between Esav and Yisrael, unacceptable Gamri. And that was our wrongdoing. That was our undoing, says the Shemi Shmuel, that we turned to the king of Edom and said, Koyamar Achicha. The fault is not on the word Achicha. The fault is on the word Yisrael. A connection between Yisrael and Esav Cholila. Yisrael represents something so dahaibin, so extraordinary. We've said many times, Yisrael represents that when there's a challenge, I don't fold. When there's a crisis, I double down and try harder. When a person's going through an issue in life, they'll try to better themselves. I remember hearing a story, I can't tell you in which particular army it happened, but that one of the heads of the army appointed someone to watch all of the soldiers ride the big stallions on horses and to make a rishima and a list who he thought was the best, and he was going to pick 10% to go ahead and be in. So he was watching from up above, and the guy with the rishima was watching, okay, he fell off after a minute, he was able to stay on 3 minutes, or he could stay on 7 minutes. He made a ganzer rishima, and he put, of course, those who were able to stay on the longest, and he brought the list to the head of the army. The head of the army was also watching, crossed off almost everybody that fellow put down, and he made an entirely new list. So he said, what are you doing? Those fellows that you're choosing for your army, they were not people that went ahead and stayed on and that stayed on the horse the longest. And he mamish did his list very meticulously, very methodically. Stayed on, stayed on, stayed on. So he looked at him, he said, foolish person, do you think that I'm taking into my army the one that stayed on the horse the longest? Who cares? So he fell off after a minute and he stayed on for an hour and a quarter. Who cares? The criteria that I look for in my army is, after falling off, who got back on the quickest? That's the only thing I care about in an army. Maybe that fellow stayed on 20 minutes, but he was so lackadaisical, he didn't get back on for another half hour. But that guy Taka fell off and he was thrown off after a minute, but 10 seconds later he was back on again. My regime, and the only thing I care about in my army is not how long somebody stayed on, but who was it that after falling off was able to persevere and get back on the quickest. That's really what Yisrael is. Yaakov and Esav, they're Taka brothers. There could never be a connection between Yisrael and Esav. Yisrael represents such a exalted living. Yisrael represents that when there are challenges, I'll double down and get back on the horse. Yisrael represents that even though I may have fallen 7 times, I'll get back up. Yisrael represents an ideal of a haya machanecha kadosh. I cannot get those words out of my mind these days. I just can't. I'm being honest with you. V'haya machanecha kadosh, the machan of yourself, the machan of your home, the machan of where you are. V'haya machanecha kadosh is a din Yisrael. That Yaakov and Esav are brothers, that's true. That Yisrael and Esav are brothers, that's our undoing. That could never be. I really think these are days as we open B'cho Yivarech Yisrael. The Taka doesn't say B'cho Yivarech Yaakov. He's the one who gave the brachos. These brachos are not emanating if you behave like a Yaakov. B'cho, to be zeicha, to turn these 22 days into meaningful days and days of rejoicing, it has to be that you turn them into bracha coming from Yisrael. It has to be that you behave like Yisrael and not like Yaakov. And that's Taka the B'shat. B'cho Yivarech. If you want to turn the 22 days, then it has to be Yisrael-dik existence. As Rabbi Blezer mentioned, these days, our response has to be a response of Yisrael. My father, Zatzal, used to say on the posuk that you find in Sefer Shemais, V'lei korav zel zeh kol halayla, in Beshalach. Now, literally it means that geographically, we did not get close to the Mitzrayim. In other words, we made sure to keep a distance of however many kilometers. My father, Zatzal, used to say differently. It was a Moiridik Chiddush. People were very inspired by it. Whenever you see the word Laila, Laila is always a reference, a euphemism to the Laila of Golus. The Meshech Chochmah speaks about it in Kama Mekaymes. Laila is a reference to Golus. My father used to say the number one rule for any Yid to remember, for any Yisrael-dik Yid to remember is V'loi korav zeh el zeh kol halayla. Throughout the whole night of Golus, V'loi korav zeh el zeh, don't get too close. Don't get too close. I want to fit in, I want to misharayin, I want to... No. V'loi korav zeh el zeh kol halayla. There's no room for us to go ahead and to get close, to mimic, to let any of the ideals seep in, kol halayla, throughout the whole long Golus. I'm trying hard, especially now, during these 3 weeks, I hope, b'siyata d'shmaya, to be able to focus on this nekuda, not of Yaakov, but of Esau. But of Yisrael. Of B'cho Yivarech Yisrael. A person's off the horse, but how quickly they could get back on. The Dahayben kind of, Ahaya Machanecha Kodesh. V'loi korav zeh el zeh kol halayla. I could hear my father saying it. This is a funereal Golus of Laila. You cannot get close. There's a uniqueness. There's a Mitsuyanim Sham. Mitsuyanim Sham. Chazal saying the word Mitsuyanim Sham. We remained unique. We remained distinct. We remained separate. We remained different. That's a badge of honor. That's not something to run from. It's an avodah taka to focus on during the 3 weeks, to be able to go ahead and bring about the Yisrael. Interesting. I was thinking after I saw this vort that there could never be a connection between Yisrael and Esav, Yaakov and Esav. Yes, Yisrael and Esav. No, I thought maybe it's very marumas in the words, because Yisrael, we're saying, is this expression of growth, of change, of persevering. Esav is milashon asui. Asui means, I'm good, I'm made. You stop telling me what to do. Stop pressuring me to take it to the next level. Listen, here's my game plan for the next 3 weeks. I put it in my calendar. And the next 3 weeks I'll do doctor's appointments, I'll fill it with this. And the morning after Tisha B'Av, life starts. That's an existence of Esav, asui. I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to be pressured. I don't want that. Yisrael is the antithesis of that. Yisrael is the expression of, I want to grow and become better. And Esav is miloshen asui, that I'm fine as is. I remember years ago hearing an interessante gematria that I think carries with it a lot of weight. Whether the person's into a gematria or not into a gematria, but I think that it's a very, very meduya dika gematria. What's taka the nafkamina between Yaakov and Yisrael, at least in terms of name and gematria? Yaakov is big gematria, 182. Yisrael is Begematria 541. The difference between 182 Yaakov and 541 Yisrael is exactly 359. Satan, Shin Tes Nun, is Begematria 359. When one overcomes Satan and gets back on and perseveres and tries and steigs and says, there's more, V'haya Machanecha Kadosh, they change and shafa matziv, not of Yaakov, but of Yisrael. Yaakov is 182, Yisrael is 541, the differential is 359, Satan. When you overcome Satan, you're able to catapult yourself to a level of Yisrael. And that's Taka B'Shat, B'cho Yivarech Yisrael. To bring about the 22 days, they should be days of bracha. We have to create a matzav of Yisrael, of a uniqueness, of a distinctness, of an exquisiteness. The whole world is setting us apart. We have to set ourselves apart. They shouldn't be doing it for us. We should be setting ourselves apart. We don't have to believe we can. I don't like when people hear these words and think, but I'm not all that. That's a treifa hashkafa. I'll bring you a nifla dikarai from the Meshech Chochma. It's a mayr dika Meshech Chochma. Pile, playing Parshas Masay coming up next week. The Pasuk says that there were Orei Miklat, 3 that were Ever Yarden. There were another 3 that were in Eretz Yisrael. A total of 6. Rashi says, if you take a look at Rashi, Lamed Heyud Gimel, the 3 that were Transjordan, Ever Yarden, were not, although they were up and running. I don't even want to equate it, but I remember on the trips when I was in Europe and there with a tour. So I remember when I was by Madanik, it's so surreal that you mamish think Chalil Rahman al-Islam, you don't even want to say the words, like a person just connects a little electricity and like everything is in such kept in such working order, Chalil Rahman al-Islam. But that's mamish the feeling that you get. You look around and it's like that's the only thing that was missing was the electricity to go. Other than that, in Maidanik, everything. And right next to it, the Lublini Yeshiva. It's not for now, but the worst thing about it is, and I'm sorry I'm digressing for 30 seconds, that mamish in Maidanik across a small field where all of the houses and apartment buildings of the Nazis, Yimach Shemam V'Zichram, that in the morning, they packed their breakfast, their lunch, their croissant, their coffee, they crossed the street, did their arbit, they did their work, murdered Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael, and then in the evening crossed the street and went home. If you've ever been, I just described exactly what it's like. I'm sorry I digress. Be it as it may, the Orei Miklat were really operational. But, so Rashi, Lamed Heyud Gimel in Masay, that they could not be, although they were operational, although they were ready to work, they couldn't be operational until 14 years later when the other 3 in Eretz Yisrael, the switch had to be turned on all 6 at the same time. That's what Rashi's masber. Why? That means it comes out that for those 14 years, that it really could have worked as soon as you just put on the switch. But Vibalti had to have a 14-year delay. If somebody was culpable and killed somebody b'shaygei, although that manslaughter is terrible, it was essentially off the hook. What's the Hezber in Rashi? The Meshech Chochma Meir Simcha, Zecher Tzaddik Kosher Bracha says in Nifla Degavard, he's masber. We know, of course, since the Gemara in Makkas, that the only way that a person goes free is with the death of the Kohen Gadol. Albeit it might have been at the time that he killed b'shaygei that it was a very young Kohen Gadol. And maybe if it was a young Kohen Gadol, I don't know, people could die young. Every day that this fellow who killed b'shaygei was in Ir Miklat, he had hope. He had hope. Because if the Kohen Gadol dies, albeit it might have been a young Kohen Gadol, I go free. So every day he knew he had a ticket to get out, a get out of jail ticket, a free pass, a way to get out with the death of the Kohen Gadol. During those 14 years, 7 years of conquest of Eretz Yisrael and 7 years of dividing Eretz Yisrael, for those 14 years, we know that Elazar, who was appointed Kohen Gadol after his father Aaron, the Torah appoints Elazar, B'nai Shel Aaron Kohen Gadol, who became the Kohen Gadol, appoints Elazar together with Yeshua to divide Eretz Yisrael. That means that if somebody would have killed b'shaygei and gone to that Ir Miklat Ever Yarden, for the next 14 years, he knew the Kohen Gadol, Elazar Kohen Gadol, couldn't possibly die, because the Torah is made that Elazar Kohen Gadol was chosen together with Yeshua after the 7 years of conquest to divide Eretz Yisrael. That means for sure, for the next 14 years, I'm stuck here because the Kohen Gadol can't possibly die. To kill somebody b'shaygei is bad. To take away his hope is too harsh. Don't take away anybody's hope. Zok de Meshech Chochma, look it up yourself. Of course, to kill b'shaygei, The person should be culpable and it's terrible. But you have no right to put him in such a harsh matziv that for the next 14 years of his life, every day when he gets up, he knows, I have no hope. Elazar has to stay alive till the division of Eretz Yisrael is finished, and I only go out with the death of the Kohen Gadol. You're essentially removing his hope. You're removing his ability to believe he could change his situation. You're removing him from a Yisrael existence, and you're placing him in an Esav matziv. That, says the Meshech Chochmah, is too harsh. You don't do that even to somebody who killed B'Shegeg. That's why in V'lam Al-Shinim we say, there's a lot of things we say in V'lam Al-Shinim to do to those who inform on us. But what's the worst thing you could do? I think it's from Rav Shlomo Zalman. V'lam Al-Shinim, Alti Sikva. Take away their hope. I'm pretty sure it's from Rav Shlomo Zalman. Because when you take away somebody's hope, there ain't nothing worse you could do to a person. Nothing. And Mamela, that's why they couldn't be operational until 14 years later, because you can't put a person in a matzah where he has no hope. I know the 3 weeks are known, the Haftarah plus the Furonus, I'm aware of that. The 3 of affliction. I think it's a chance to view the 3 weeks as 3 weeks of hope. 3 weeks of Yisrael. 3 weeks of Eloi Karav Zel Zeh Kol Halayla. 3 weeks of getting back on the horse and creating a matzav al hayamachanech kadosh. 3 weeks of unbelievable steiging sai ben adam lachavera ben adam lamakam ben adam la'atzmai. Everybody knows on an individual level. I really believe humbly that's a way to view the 3 weeks. Don't take away my hope. Make them weeks of yearning, weeks of belief. Rabbi Yaakov Galinsky, extraordinary Yaakov Galinsky. He brings down a mice I said last year on Tisha B'Av. It's a hard mice to say over. There were 10 Yidden, and he said, I heard this from the Rav that it happened with. There were 10 Yidden who did something that they ended up, the government or whatever type of court they were placing, whatever type of court there was, obviously wasn't a real one. And instead of being punished, these 10 Yidden to Siberia, they were punished to be condemned as prisoners to death. After the judges announced the verdict, the highest ranking priest went to the courtroom and he told the 10 Yidden, in this fake courtroom in Russia, where they were condemned to death for whatever trumped up charges, I'm giving you a chance to live. Just convert to Christianity, and you'll all be pardoned. You can return home like nothing happened. I'm giving you 5 days to make your decision. Mamash a modern day Nasana Taikif. Not exact Maisa, but similar. The Russians knew that the strength of the Yidden comes when we're together. We strengthen each other's emunah. So they deliberately divided the 10 prisoners into 10 different cells. With each one being alone, the priest was sure that they would no doubt convert to save their lives. No one in those days was ever allowed to visit the prisoners except for the Rav himself, the Rav who told this to Rabbi Yaakov Galinsky. The priest told the Rav, have compassion on your 10 people and convince them, Rabbi, to convert to Christianity. The 5th day arrived, and the Rav said, let's daven together for 10 of our Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael that they remain strong and pass the difficult test. Don't exchange the Olam HaNitzchi for just a few years in this fleeting world. Let's daven that they should pass the Nisayan and die al Kiddush Hashem and be Kain Olam Haba. The Rav was made the heart-rending tefillos or nishsum gloibim. After the davening, very emotionally, the Rav took out 9 candles, and he lit 9 candles. Le'iloi nishmais, the 9 men who for sure chose death over converting. And he didn't take out a 10th candle because one of the 10 who were accused was a young orphan boy. And he only had a mother. And this was her only child. And the Rav figured that a young boy, a Yosem with an Almana, he's not going to be able to pass the Nisayan. Why should I distress the poor Almana with the thought that maybe he couldn't have passed the Nisayan? The Almana was watching from the Ezras Noshim, and she stood up and she called out to the Rav, "Light a candle for my son! Rebbe, light a candle for my son! Light a 10th candle! I'm sure he'll be Meiser Nefesh. That's my only hope. Don't take away my hope. Don't take away a person's hope. My only hope is that he shouldn't fail the test, and I want to remain with this Amunah." The Rav lit the 10th candle so as not to take away her hope. A little while later, a shliach arrived with the news that 10 men, including the little boy, had died al Kiddush Hashem. The mother rejoiced over her son's sacrifice. They understood her love for Yiddishkeit. She passed down to the Yosem. And by not taking away her hope, she was taka right. He passed the test. These are days of hope. These are days of Yisrael. These are days of uniqueness of Elekarav Zelza Kol Alayla. I want to end with a bracha from the Netziv. The Netziv. The last pasuk in Eicha. Ki im ma'ois ma'astonu katzafta aleinu ad ma'oid hashivenu Hashem melech v'neshuva chadesh yameinu ki kedem. Says the Netziv, when an Adain has an Eved that did a chet, the Adain is not happy with the Eved. There are two ways that the Adain could respond to the Eved. If he plans on keeping the Eved, then he's got to teach him a lesson. He's got to give him a patch. He's got to beat him. He's got to do whatever he can. I plan on keeping you, so I have to shape you up that you don't make the mistake again. The other approach that the Adam could take is, I'm so frustrated with you, I'm sending you off. Now, if he's sending off the Eved, he's not going to lay a hand on him. You want to sell an Eved that looks good, that looks pristine, not one that you gave all the clap to. The treatment of the Adam to the Eved tells you, says the Netziv, what the Adam plans on doing with the Eved, keeping him or sending him off. Zok the Netziv, Soif Eicha. Ribono Shel Olam. You're our Adon, we are your Avadim, and we have done things incorrect. But as our Adon, what do you plan on doing with us? Hichlifam ba'uma acheres? Sending us off? Or you plan on keeping us? Vaistais, you plan on keeping us. As the Pasuk says, Ki ema'os ma'astanu. We taka have been disgraced and given patch. Kotzafta aleinu ad ma'oid. The Borei Olam, as our Adam towards us as the Avadim, has displayed anger. So while of course that's very harsh treatment, but that could only mean one thing. It could only mean that the treatment you plan on giving us is not to send us off to another nation, because if you plan on sending us off, you would keep us in mint condition. From the fact that Mois Mastana Katzafta Oleinu Adnoid, that's the Gresta Raya that you plan on keeping us. If you plan on keeping us, Hashivenu Hashem Elecha V'Nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. May the taka happen. B'Meir B'Yameinu. Amen. Alex, thank you. I don't know why I went up and out of Chumash. I feel so bad.